Let's talk about Ali Hazelwood because I feel like she has almost become her own genre at this point. People will say, oh, this one, it feels like an Ali Hazelwood book, and you know what they mean. The banter, the STEM settings, the grumpy hero who's obsessed with the heroine. Her books are their own vibe. But the thing that keeps me coming back to Ali Hazelwood's books is not the romance or the banter. And it's something that I think is kind of rare, even in contemporary romance. So today, I want to go deep into what makes Ali's writing so special. Her background, her books, her characters, her evolution from an academic to romance writer to paranormal romance writer, and most of all, this theme that runs through every single one of her books and keeps us coming back for more. So Ali Hazelwood has what I consider the ultimate book talk origin story. She is literally a neuroscientist who started writing fanfic on the side, Raylo fanfic, which I think is why some of the dynamics can feel very familiar to us as readers. So Ali Hazelwood is Italian, she is an academic, and she somehow manages to write these full romance novels while working in STEM, which is deeply intimidating and definitely inspiring. Like, ma'am, how are you running experiments and then still writing your spicy banter on the side? His writing feels very effortless. It's witty, self-aware, it's very light, but when you read her books, you begin to see how much discipline and work she's actually putting into her stories. Her sentences are crisp, her pacing is tight, and she can feel when to undercut a serious moment with humor. I feel like it's like Jane Austen with some espresso, a better Wi-Fi, and maybe paranormal elements. Also, Ali Hazelwood does not condescend to her readers. She knows that we're smart, she knows that we're romance readers, so she writes these tropes, but she never crosses into cynicism. The emotional core always feels real and respected. And yes, her books are very spicy, but you could skip all the spice in these books and still be left with a fantastic story. And here is the theme that I think makes her books very unique. It is that her female characters are not afraid to want things. And these are not just romantic things that they want. They want family, they want belonging, they want healing, they want a career, they want friends, they want to know their parents, they want to know more about who they are. And part of their journey is always learning to not apologize for the fact that they want things. I think that's honestly very rare, even in contemporary romance writers. So many stories about women treat emotion or desire as something that has to be explained away or tamed or eliminated. Ali Hazelwood just goes, no, wanting things is part of being alive, and she makes that journey so incredibly joyful. At their core, her books are about the beauty and wanting things. So let's start off by talking about her STEM romances, because these are the books that made Ali Hazelwood a household name in the romance book world. So we start with Love Hypothesis, which is her first novel, and the one that honestly made fake dating popular again. This is about Olive, a PhD student studying biology who accidentally kisses a random professor in the hallway, except the professor turns out to be the terrifying, extremely competent Adam Carlson, and now they're fake dating. So you can already see the fanfic bones right here. It's funny, it's flustered, and it's tropey in the best kind of way. And again, what I love about Olive is that she wants so much. She wants to be taken seriously in her field. She wants to do something meaningful. She wants to stop apologizing for taking up space. And she's a little scared of all those wants, but she doesn't deny them. In so many ways, this book is about Olive figuring out how to make all of her desires fit together in a life that's true for her. And what I love about this is that Ali rewards this. She doesn't punish her for all of these wants that she has. She says you can want many different things in your life, and you deserve to figure out how to have them all. All right, and then we have Love on the Brain, which is all about Bee, another scientist who is definitely Hazelwood's most chaotic heroine. Bee is a neuroscientist who ends up working with her grad school nemesis on a NASA project. And surprise, he's not actually her nemesis, but I will let you read the book to figure out what happens next. Bee is very unapologetically herself. She is smart, she is impulsive, she is a little bit of a mess. She doesn't try to tone herself down to fit other people's expectations. And this again is something that I think Hazelwood really nails. She writes women who are very competent but not cold, ambitious but not cruel. You get to see them, whole complicated people. B wants success, but she also wants to be seen, not just as a scientist, but as a person. I love that she has a whole 5K sub-theme running through this entire book. She's training for something that's a hobby that she wants to succeed at. All right, and now we have Love Theoretically, which a lot of people consider to be one of her better works. This book is about Elsie, a physicist who is barely living in survival mode. She's an adjunct professor working multiple jobs, barely keeping her head above water. And when she gets the chance to interview for a permanent position, she finds out one of the people on the hiring committee is the guy who she thinks has been destroying her field online. What makes this story so emotional is not the romance. It's about Elsie realizing that her people-pleasing compulsion is actually costing her every single happiness that she has worked for in her life. And this is where Hazelwood's writing, I think, really hits the hardest. She writes heroines who learn to tell the truth about what they actually want, not what other people have told them that they need to want. And so in one of her more recent books, Maya is the perfect example of this. She ends up revealing she wants something very simple and very authentic, and Hazelwood doesn't treat this as settling. It's very powerful because it is choosing joy over choosing performance. I love that every single one of her books has this very revolutionary heart where the heroine gets to say, actually, I don't want to suffer for success, whatever that might look like. I want to be happy. Rue, for example, is my personal favorite Hazelwood heroine. She wants a family, not in a vague, sentimental way, but in a bone deep, I want to belong to someone who also belongs to me kind of way. And this is what I mean when I say that Hazelwood's heroines aren't afraid to want things. Rue's wants are huge. They define her life, but she's never treated as needy or naive for admitting what it is that she actually wants. All right, now let's talk about her paranormal book. Her newer paranormal romances, like Bride and Mate, take this same emotional DNA and they just transplant it into supernatural worlds. You still get the STEM heroines. They're just doing their work surrounded by vampires and werewolves now. And what is wild is this tone still really works. The humor, the banter, the tension, it's all right there. But the stakes feel higher, the longing does feel bigger, and the plot becomes more complex. And even in the paranormal setting, Hazelwood's still talking about emotional safety, about being seen and valued. The vampires and the shifters really just become metaphors for those parts of ourselves that we think we have to hide to be accepted. It's still Hazelwood at heart, just with a little more bite. So why is it that these books hit us so hard? Why do they feel like comfort food and emotional excavation at the same time? So part of it is Hazelwood's voice, her quick, witty, internally monologued style that feels like being in a group chat with one of your funniest friends. But part of it is also structure. Every Hazelwood story follows this kind of emotional setup. A smart, capable woman who is not convinced of her own worth meets someone who sees her clearly. They fall in love despite every obstacle because of the understanding that they grow together. And through all of that, her heroines just learn to keep wanting things. They are encouraged to be more, not less. More space, more respect, more love, more happiness, more joy. This is where Hazelwood's emotional power comes from. Wanting is how the heroines find themselves. And I love that Hazelwood's romances are incredibly safe. I don't mean boring, but they're very emotionally safe. You always know that the characters are going to handle each other with care. There's tension, but I can't think of a single instance where the characters are cruel to each other. And honestly, that is very rare in a modern contemporary romance. And it's also why her dialogue becomes so addictive. So we have this intimacy through understanding. It's very intimate to be known. It's addictive to have someone notice the tiny things that maybe you don't even see about yourself and to find out that they admire and love them. All right, now let's talk about the Hazelwood hero, because honestly, these men are doing God's work. They are stoic, respectful, and always confused about why people find them intimidating. They are usually the grumpy in the grumpy sunshine trope, but they don't shame the sunshine for being who she is. Instead, they love it. These guys are secure. They listen, they apologize, they don't try to fix, they just love the heroine for who she is. And this is what I think makes Ali Hazelwood so appealing to a lot of modern readers. We are tired of love stories that romanticize chaos. We want to read about people who communicate, who care, who build something together. And Hazelwood gives that to us without losing any of the tension. So where a lot of contemporary romance writers are going to build drama through pain, Hazelwood builds it through longing and tenderness. And you know what? Her books do feel like fan fiction in the best way. Emotionally lush, hyper specific, and very sincere. No irony, no apology, just an acknowledgement of what you have been craving emotionally. So at the end here, to bring it all together, the reason that I love Ali Hazelwood so much is because she writes women who are brave enough to want things. Not just romance, but everything. Rue wants a family. Olive wants to be respected. Bee wants to succeed without compromise. And they all get to have love too, but love isn't their only goal. It's the reward for being honest about who they are. I think that Ali Hazelwood's books remind us that it is okay to want things, to want more out of life, to want affection, to want rest, to want to build a life that brings you joy instead of one that tears you down. So in a lot of ways, Ali Hazelwood is teaching us through these funny, tender stories that you don't have to shrink your desires to be lovable. You can want a career and you can want a happy ending. You can want a career and a happily ever after. You can want to change the world and you can want to go home to somebody who makes you feel safe. So tell me in the comments, which Ali Hazelwood heroine do you see yourself in? Are you the Olive, the Bee, the Maya, or the Rue? If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe. And maybe share it with your friend who swears she's not into romance, because honestly, she probably just hasn't met Ali Hazelwood yet.